Today, welcome to this webinar. We do a lot of webinars here at SOS talking to various customers and partners. In today's webinar, we're specifically looking at the SOS technology and as it's used by our small business market. The webinars, just from a housekeeping standpoint, and so you know what you signed up for, be roughly a 30-minute webinar, followed then by detailed question and answers. So we really recommend or ask that people ask questions throughout the presentation, makes these presentations much more lively and interesting. We'll do our best to answer those questions along with the content, and otherwise we'll answer all questions that have been typed at the end of the webinar. In the GoToWebinar software, you can press the question button, there's a little question mark icon, and then you can type a question. A few of you have already used that to give us information about the sound check. Yeah, really encourage you to do that throughout the presentation. In terms of the material we'll be covering, a brief overview of who SOS is as a company. We'll then, Lynn will be talking to the regulatory frameworks that exist that apply to many different types of small businesses, and in particular, which functionalities and features within the SOS technology stack meet the requirements of those regulatory frameworks. I'll then we'll take a brief tour through the backup and DR industry. We'll look at the traditional backup technology being used by small businesses in America, and then we'll turn to the SOS technology. So we'll look at key areas of technology in detail. That section of the webinar will often be driven by audience interest. So if there's parts of the technology you'd like to hear more about, please type a question and we can drill into that. And then at the end, as I said, we'll have a general Q&A. Intended audience today, small to medium businesses. Our real power sector as a company is businesses with 5 to 50 employees. That's what we focus on. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll be announcing how to go in the running for the Kindle draw. So there'll be a promotion code that you need, and that'll be at the end of the webinar. Terrific. With that, we'll dive in. So who is SOS? For those of you not particularly familiar with SOS, this is just a brief overview of the company. We've been around for nearly a decade now. We're we're very well known in the online backup space. Google Online Backup usually in the top 3 or 4 results. Founded originally in 2001 to focus on what was then a very nascent and early stage market. We've always been dedicated to online backup, but we've got general disaster recovery and other backup technology. So we've got a local backup stack as well. We've won many product awards. Our technology continues to attract awards every year. Laptop Magazine Editor's Choice, been PC Magazine Editor's Choice every year since 2006. We generally focus on being the technology leader of the space. We pride ourselves on continuing to drive the standards in the online backup space. So many of the features of online backup technology as an industry we pioneered, things like physical media upload to seed data centers, the whole private key encryption system that SOS uses, which we call UltraSafe. We were the first to use that. So we've really been at the forefront of online backup since the beginning of the industry. And that's then reflected by our size. We've got more than 200 employees worldwide. We operate offices on 4 continents, and we've got 10 data centers around the world with more than 3 million customer accounts and nearly 10 million PCs being protected. We say all of that just by way of pointing out that we've been in this game a long time. We're a large firm that you can rely on, and frankly, we're the best in the market at what we do. The goal of today's webinar is to educate you about the industry, educate you about online backup in general, and about our technology in particular, and why we think you should work with us. Probably covered this slide, but in terms of positioning what our focus is in the market, we're very much a small business focused company. We do have a consumer offering. We've got a lot of users who use our home user offering. We do have enterprise customers, but really where we shine is in the small business space. Some of these other brands on this slide you might be familiar with, and this slide just attempts to position those other brands in terms of their focus. Obviously, Carbonite and Mozy, very much consumer-centric, home user-focused solutions. And then Iron Mountain, Symantec, both very much enterprise solutions, very expensive to use. Where we sit and where we like to focus is on that 5 to 50 employee small business. And the solution that we have in this market is a unique solution. It's a combination of our physical infrastructure around the world, our software, and then our professional services, particularly our Blue Sky professional services team, which is a real differentiator for us. what we offer to businesses is a fully managed online backup experience. So what I mean by that is not only do we have our world-class physical infrastructure, our data centers, and our award-winning software that we can provide to you, but unlike anybody else, we'll provide you with a backup solutions consultant, an actual engineer who will work with you in what we call a kickoff meeting to assess your environment, design a proper disaster recovery strategy for your small business, deploy our software to your environment, actually install and configure it, manage and monitor the backup of your data to our data centers to make certain that it's usually there's a 30-day window, which is a critical window to make certain that your online backup deployment is working fully, and that's really where we'll provide intensive care, or what we call white glove service. There's then comprehensive training that we provide to you and your staff, because online backup opens up a whole new way of interacting with data. We'll talk more about that in a few slides' time. But obviously training for your IT staff, but as well as your general users. And then our technical support, which is second to none, 24/7 technical support with our Blue Sky team, including, as I said, they'll not only remote into your machines and do the initial deployment and installation, but they'll be there to resolve any issues that occur and to troubleshoot and actually resolve them themselves. So it's a full-service solution. And really what we say is we want to back up your business so you can focus on what you do best. And to that end, we provide every piece of the puzzle, the hardware, the software, and the services. So let's turn now and look at the most common and prevalent backup technologies that are out there in the market, and in particular the regulatory burdens that are associated with online backup in particular.
This is Lynn Weber. I would like to address some of the key regulatory compliance issues that come up in our SMB business, and to point out some of the features and the reasons why our solution meets or exceeds their standards. Later, Ken is going to be looking at and explaining other solutions you will all be familiar with and point out places where they do not meet some of these requirements. The most common that we come across is requirements around HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, SEC requirements, even folks who ask us about SAS 70. And there's key features they're looking for in order to meet or exceed those requirements. One of them is that data that gets backed up needs to be in geographically separate locations, being backed up and stored in multiple locations. We meet that. We have 5 Tier 4 data centers in the U.S. currently, 10 globally, and your data is not only at one data center, but at least 2, stored at a very high encryption level. The data is frankly encrypted locally before even taken off-site. Particularly for Sarbanes-Oxley, which governs financial data, those records need to be kept for 7 years, date time stamped. We feature free and unlimited versioning. That is all date time stamped. That means literally you can accomplish proving your records per Sarbanes-Oxley with this solution. And
that can all be fully archived. So even if you've destroyed your on-site copy of the digital data, we can still archive that data for you in the cloud until such time as you need to then remove that.
The other feature, and HIPAA is law that is required by any health information, is in order to truly secure it, you have to manage who has access to the data. And the most secure way to run that is with a single decryption key. This is an option that is free within the software. You would just, when you sign up for an account, make sure that your sales executive knows that you need HIPAA requirements, and we will develop a single decryption key, which means nobody within the SOS world, or anybody for that matter, can have access to your data unless they know that password and username combination that you would manage. This also is what meets and exceeds SEC requirements and, frankly, a whole host of other requirements. These have focused on U.S. laws and requirements. However, we have global clients who also have very similar limitations and requirements, and these bullets here really exceed those as well.
We're going to dive into each of these technologies in detail when we look at the technology in a few slides' time. So if there are any questions there, we'll feel free to type them. Otherwise, we'll move on and we'll do a deep dive in some of these topics in just a few minutes. Thank you, Lynn. So turning now to what is the most common types of backup technology being used in the industry today, we really still see a prevalence in the market, particularly the small business market, of three main types of technology being used. Online backup really is in the early stages of adoption. The US backup market annually is roughly $10 billion, of which, I mean, depending on who you listen to, $3 to $4 to $5 billion of that is in the small business space. And then that spend is divided up between hardware, software, and services. So it's quite a fractured market. In terms of the hardware technology that's still being used out there in the small business market in America in particular, there are three primary technologies being tape, disk, and DVD, all of which we bundle up into what we call centrally architected backup solutions. So what we mean by that is, typical situation is an office environment, perhaps with some laptops, some workstations, and a server. All the data goes to the server, and then the server gets backed up. And as a company, what we've discovered is that model is fundamentally broken. It doesn't provide adequate backup service to its users. It's often very expensive, and it's often very error-prone. We'll talk to those on the next slide. Tape is the most common backup technology being used in the market today. Normally on these webinars we have a poll and we poll the participants, but today that hasn't been set up. Actually, I'd be interested if anybody types their comments. Feel free to type through what type of technology you're using for backup, online backup, tape, disk, DVD, or don't know. We often actually get a lot of I don't know. So looking at the centrally architected backup solutions, so external hard disk drive, Rebecca Nielsen's type, which falls under disk and generally still falls within the centrally architected backup solution category. Looking at a one-up comparison of centrally architected solutions, and again, what I mean by that is hardware-based solutions that are tied to one central data node, like a server. And let's contrast that with the world of online backup. First and foremost, with these traditional technologies, backup is difficult to actually deploy and set up. So nearly invariably, IT staff is required to set up these backup technologies. Whereas with online backup, it's extremely simple software that you can install yourself on all of your computers. And it's something that small business operators will generally do for themselves or do in-house, even if they don't have IT staff in-house. They won't even get their IT consultant involved. Furthermore, with SOS's Blue Sky offering, SOS will in fact do that deployment for you. So all of the complication around setting up and configuring online backup is removed by our Blue Sky team, and it's a fundamentally better world than when you're trying to set up hardware-based solutions like a tape array, which can be very complicated to set up. Coverage. Now, what we mean by coverage is just what data is going to be backed up. So one of the big drawbacks of these centrally architected solutions is that generally only the server is going to be protected, and generally a lot of data, excuse me, sorry for that background noise, generally a lot of the data is not actually on that server environment.
So IBM estimates that as much as 60% of data in small business in America actually lives on the edge of the network, or what we mean by the edge is laptops in particular, or branch offices. So laptops moving in and out of the corporate network are very rarely backed up. Ask yourself the question, how often does the data on your laptop get protected? Generally, any data that's sitting on the server will get backed up, but not actually laptops. So James Dianeco's just commented, hello, we use two 100 gig external hard disk drives, very cumbersome and inefficient.